Assieds-toi. How's that? Have any of you seen this presentation before at HSUS or IACP or I think a couple other places? You're all newbies? Yay. There's one video clip that's in here from last year. It was in Animal Farm's presentation. How many of you were here last year and saw that one? Okay, that one will be redundant for you. So, my name's Amy Sadler. I'm the Director of the Training and Behavior Program for the Longmont Humane Society in Longmont, Colorado. And I want to preface by saying that, do I need this one here? Can I move that out of the way? Sure. Is that better? I'm going to preface by saying the primary focus of my presentation is about dog-to-dog interactions. So instead of me saying dog-to-dog aggression or dog-to-dog resource guarding, just make that assumption that that's pretty much always what I'm talking about. And the overall premise is that with our program that's been pretty successful, it's really featuring play groups. That's probably one of our biggest strengths and our fortes. See, now our philosophy, probably like yours, is that before we can expect a dog to cope and thrive, we need to satisfy them at some level. And that was attended to in the other presentation. Of course, I didn't sleep much last night. Coming up behind a couple of serious academics is very intimidating to me. So all I know is that I better be some live entertainment because I don't have like the hardcore factual stuff the same. But hopefully you'll be interested in the work that we're doing. And I think that you're all trying to do this, and we did get some feedback from the research level that dealing with frustration and stress behaviors in the kennels, we all know that that's a reality. So of course we want to satisfy them. And one of the ways that we find that we do that the best is through allowing play groups. But the reality of it for all of us, and we've had some of this discussion already, is it's all about resources. And we function in different capacities. You know, how many of you are open admission? Okay, we are too. How many of you are open admission all the way, that you maybe don't have strays that come in another building and you kind of assess them before they come in? So both your strays and your owner surrenders, okay. So how many of you are open admission for owner surrenders but not for strays? Okay, just dividing your group up a little bit. How many of you do actually perform animal control? Okay. And any sanctuaries? Absolute full-blown no-kill no matter what. Really, truly no-kill. We're all in favor of the spirit of that movement. That's correct, right? We all want less euthanasia, and when we do have to euthanize, we want to feel like we've done it for a valid reason. So I think we would all be on the same philosophical page as trying to not euthanize healthy animals, treatable animals. But we all function in different capacities, and we all have different resources. You know, as far as for us, a huge resource is our volunteer corps. I know that when I came into Longmont Humane Society with the program, I think part of the reason why the behavior program was so strong and successful so quickly is the volunteer program was cranking. And they just brought everybody in, retrained them. We have some new stuff that we're doing, and everybody was really gung-ho. So that, I think, played a huge role. So for me, a really strong volunteer program is an enormous resource. The bottom line, the time and your physical facility. I have a picture of this dog up here, Duke, and the reason being is he's an interesting case study. He did well on a B-val, but he was moved into our behavior department because he would show barrier aggression to some people, and it was pretty random. I kind of liked the dog myself, and you know how that happens when you're in the behavior department. But I saw some concerning things. One day he was in the behavior office with me, and one of my kennel supervisors came in, and she was trying to talk to me about something. She sat down, she started petting him, and he kind of put his feet up on her, and she wasn't really paying it. She was just talking to me, yakking at me, and petting the dog like this, and he fully hackled all the way from top to bottom. And she wasn't paying attention. I said, Kim, stop petting him. And she took her hands off, and she looked at him, and she kind of averted her eyes, which was correct at that moment. She pushed him off, and he was like, "Arr," as she pushed him down. And I thought, wow, I really did not feel comfortable with what I had just seen. There was always this kind of unpredictable quality to him. But again, he was one of those dogs, he was really good until he wasn't. So I made the decision to pass on him. I just didn't feel like I could put my finger on it. So I personally was walking him up the hall to the euthanasia room. And they were waiting for me, and a lot of times that's my role with the dogs that are particularly tricky. My job is to make them feel comfortable that nothing is about to happen. It's, you know, for those of you that do that as well, especially the ones that are not handleable by other people, so my job is to make them comfortable. It's definitely not one of those nights that I sleep well because I basically tricked them into thinking, no, because you're with me, you can feel safe that it's all cool, and then I kill you. So it's like, it messes with your head, but sometimes that's the role. My role was to make him as comfortable as possible in that last moment. But I'm walking down the hall with him, and my stomach started flipping. I started getting this feeling like, wow, I just feel like I need to know more about this dog. And so I stopped, and I took him home. Because at that point, and I'm not saying that anybody else should be doing that, but what I'm saying is that I didn't expect any other resource from the shelter to go into him. So if I needed to advocate for him at that moment, and we support our volunteers and staff to do this, if they feel really strongly that they want to advocate a dog, you personally can take that dog home and we'll support you, but we're not placing it into the community, but this is going to be kind of an in-house thing, and you can see. So we will support advocacy at a certain point for certain animals, but it's very in-house. So this was my turn. I had to in-house step up and take him home. He still lives with me. But this is, do you guys know Rue Yori down at the bottom? He has, oh my gosh, the pit bull, disc dog pit bull, Wallace the pit bull. At any rate, he came through town for a competition, and I said to him, I've got this dog with me that I think is super special, and I brought him down to the competition, and he started messing with him on a flexi lead. In about 5 minutes, this dog was doing catches that these guys train a year to go into competition with. He did a demo in the middle of the finals with this dog. We thought for sure he'd be like a ringer as a Frisbee dog. That was a place where a direct connect from Rue, who knew these competitors, a small group of people. I thought this will be the resource for this dog. Surprisingly, there's a video of him if you want to see it on YouTube. It's called Duke, High Flying Disc Dog. And you can watch this demo, and this is all about resources. So Duke, lucky dog that he is not a dead dog. He's not a dog that I felt comfortable placing through the shelter. He lives in my home. But it's one of those things where we've gone 10 different directions to be as creative as possible while still being responsible and trying to utilize whatever resources we can drum up. So I'm never one to say that you should. And anything that we do in the presentation here that you watch us do, maybe it's something that we're comfortable doing. You as another shelter, I hope we can all network, because maybe you have a particular strength with resource guarders or with super shy dogs. And what I would love to know is that I could call you one day and say, hey, I do really well with this kind of dog. Why don't you send him to me? But I have one that you're going to excel with. And so that's a way of utilizing resources, because we're all limited at some point with the resources that we have at the moment. So that's Duke's story about the crazy resources that I'm stuck with him. But how many of you are stuck with a dog from the shelter that was not placeable? I feel ya. Okay. So, and then see up at the top here, I'm supposed to have here's our old shelter when I first came in 2004 to Longmont. And right here is the top of that dome, because it was only 20 years old, so we had to embrace the dome and build around it. We couldn't bulldoze it and insult the community for everything that they put into it. So there's the tip of the dome, and this is our new facility. And the thing that's frustrating for us is that, yes, it's an awesome new facility, so everybody thinks we have a gazillion dollars. We don't. So, but it's definitely a nicer place for us to function in, and definitely nicer for the animals than what they had. And not everybody has this. You'll see a lot of video in the presentation that is while we were functioning here, because I don't want anybody to get frustrated thinking, well, of course you could do that. Look at that big, beautiful building you have. We did it too when we didn't have the big, beautiful building. So in my opinion, no shelter program can be a one-size-fits-all due to our varying resources. So that's why we should be working really well together. For us, and we can all talk about this privately, or everybody can come hit me later, we have a full toolbox in our program, our behavior program, because we believe if the only tool you have is a hammer, you guys know it, then everything else becomes a nail. So we kind of go all across the board with everything that we use. And again, if anybody wants to discuss that with me, I'm happy to do that. But our number one behavior modification tool by far, anybody have any idea? Play groups for us, that's our. Okay, so the benefits of play groups. Determining sociability, dog parks, etc., are a way of life for many adopters. How many of you like dog parks? How many of you don't like dog parks? All right, more like a couple of neutral people. The truth of the matter is, though, we're not taking these animals home. We're sending them out with adopters. And a lot of our adopters like dog parks. Even when we try to advise them about it, it is part of life right now. So it's important for us when we place animals and we do these adoption matches that maybe we can say, well, do you plan on going to the dog park? All right, well, we now know that this dog has experienced a version of that almost every day, so we can help you make a better match, for example. So we really can determine from the play groups what experience that person might be having if that's going to be part of their lifestyle. The physical outlet, exercise, and mental simulation of play groups. If you think about it, let's say not a lot of us don't have time. If you have, let's say we have approximately 80 dogs in-house all the time, for every volunteer in the morning to try to walk that dog and give it a really nice 30-minute walk that would feel good and be a good experience for that dog is pretty time-consuming. And when you're talking, again, about resources, that's pretty hard to accomplish. So if they're running around playing and romping, we think it's about, a 30-minute play group is probably equivalent to a dog going out and taking a really nice 2-hour walk. That's, nothing scientific about that. It's just generally what we're comparing them to. And the mental energy that's burned with intensive social interaction. How many of you do mark and reward training? Work with clickers, right? How tired are those dogs after they do a session like that? When they have to really concentrate and think about what they're doing? You feel that they're, for mental stimulation, it's very tiring. So when they have to really concentrate on these social interactions with the other dogs, it burns a lot of mental energy as well. So here's an example. This dog, at our facility, people cringe at this. If I have a stray, I know nothing about that dog. The first experience he's going to have after the stray weight period is up is going to be to go straight out to playgroup. It might not mean that he gets into playgroup. For whatever reason, I might observe something on the outside that I think, yeah, I want to do this more controlled later on. But they're put on the board. They're now available to go out to playgroup, and that's their first handling is to be taken straight out to playgroup. So here's an example of one first experience. Oh, why don't we have sound? Well, this is Charlie right here. We have no sound. Let's see. Pardon me? Play it? Okay. Does that have something else to do with how I have it? Oh, maybe. Let's see. Oh. Okay, so this is Charlie right here. He's a male dog.
Can we go down the
He's
upper end? Look at the tail. Helicopter tail.
How many of you, because of the kind of dog that he looks like he is, would not be comfortable just throwing him in with a group of dogs? Okay. This is literally his first experience, so there wasn't like we had prepped him before this. He came out of the stray kennel and went in. We're going to talk about play styles a little bit later, and remember rough and rowdy, because this is a really good version of it. We're going to talk about, I think you're stuck with me 4 times, and I think it says, what am I supposed to be talking about? Body posture or something. We're going to kind of talk about that through this whole entire presentation about hackling and tail position and ears and mouth and everything. But generally speaking, what I always want you to look at is the entire picture of the dog, not to focus or burn on certain postures or certain aspects of a dog's posture. Is anybody uncomfortable with any of this so far? Good. How many of you feel like, you have me again for 5 hours and 45 minutes? You have over 3 hours of videotape. Anybody feel like, wow, watching dogs?
Right, Jake? Jake, don't I yell at you all the time? Are you too tired to get up? That's refreshing.
Yeah, Jake was he was in behavior for a while for high arousal. Really hard to leash up, all over you, mouthy. So play groups were a huge part of his kind of behavior modification protocol. At any rate, do any of you feel that if we're watching hours and hours of play group that will feel redundant or boring to any of you? Sweet. Okay, I'm in. Okay. Natural environment for pack animals. We have a lot of stuff going on right now with pack stuff because of Cesar Millan being so popular on TV. And if anybody wants to talk to me about Cesar Millan, I'm happy to do it at any point. And you might be surprised by what I have to say, but I love pack work too. Pack-like bonding versus social isolation can minimize behavioral deterioration. I mean, if you think about animals, it's the same when I used to ride horses for a living, and you go into some of the top equestrian barns, and the horses are kept separate from one another. Those are the barns a lot of times where you see obsessive-compulsive behaviors, like the horses with their heads hanging out, because they're not really given the opportunity to behave like pack animals, herd animals, in a natural state. So we have to remember that dogs are pack animals. So keeping them in isolated kennels and knowing that they're all around each other but not having access to one another probably contributes to some of this behavioral deterioration that we see in kennel environments, right? Rapid behavior modification can be accomplished by utilizing that natural instinct for pack interactions. Every time you see these little boxes, it's a video. It's very exciting.
Aussie mix, number 507.
I have the volume muted because there's a really obnoxious barking dog that'll make your skin crawl. It's like one of those horrible. The purpose of this part of the video is to show that this is a dog that's in a high state of stress, what was already presented to us. He's in the freeze mode, catatonic kind of state. We named him Swiffer because you could literally push him from side to side in the kennel when you went to feed the queen. He just wouldn't move. Again, this is just to show you that he has no defense, so he's not going to react defensively, aggressively. He's just in a catatonic state of stress. Yeah, and these are the kinds of dogs that we all want to be successful for, right? You know, and you worried so much about how much can we bring them around and how long is it going to take? Typically, how many of you would guess that he's not interested in treats? Right. So if you don't have that on your side, how do you create a positive motivator when it doesn't exist naturally? You have to deprive them of food to create hunger drive to now create an interest in the treats or the food, which there's a legitimacy to that. There's no doubt about it. But if you have another way of doing it without creating more deprivation for a shelter dog, why not try it? Now, I didn't put it on tape, but he didn't know how to walk on leash. I ended up picking him up. He urinated all over me, defecated too. And the point was let's just get him out to play yard, see how he feels about other dogs. Do you guys not have sound again?
Oh, we turned it down for that part.
Oh, now it can come back up if you can. Okay. I tried to help you on my video editing a little bit, but not all the time. One thing that's really important to me when I'm doing presentations, I've been at presentations when I've been told, well, do you see this, do you see that, this is what you're looking at. And I don't feel like that's what I'm looking at. I really, really, especially with this group, it feels pretty intimate at this point. If I say this is what you're looking at and you don't see it, please say stop, and let's stop it and talk about it right then and there. Because I don't want to...
Well, at least she stood up. You had to get someone from the ground up to motivate her.
I don't want to convince you guys of what you're seeing. I want us to collectively discuss it. Because we all have different reads at times.
Yeah.
He was young. He was maybe 8, 9 months. He was a little baby. And when I do edits, I'm just trying to skip boring parts for you. For the sake of that, I'm not really trying to edit out uglies. Believe me, trust me, by the time we're done with this thing, you'll think, yeah, she doesn't edit out the ugly stuff. But I'm definitely a full transparency kind of person. But some of it's redundant and boring. That's Whoopi. That's her name.
Okay, this is the end of the healer's first social session lasted about an hour or a little bit more, and she wouldn't walk on the leash, had to be carried, had to be dragged out to the play yard, and now as you can see she's walking just fine.
Anybody know I have the other dog? Ponying. I'm basically ponying that puppy, right? He's obviously more comfortable with dogs than he is with people, right?
Sitting right up at the front of her kennel right now.
So this was the second day. Now look at his position compared to the day before. Right.
Play group number 2 for the healer puppy, who seems to at least be mobile and happy this morning. Look at that.
So obviously I don't have to force the creation of a
This
positive
is
motivator.
Valentine's
Dogs,
Day.
right? It's natural for him.
February 14th. About
And if you notice,
8.
I don't interact with him much.
Okay, this
I'm
is
not
end
trying to
of
get
play
him to
session
love
number
me.
2.
I'm just trying to get him to be natural and comfortable. And he seems to have this like kind of innate interest in me, like, hey, yo, you must have something going on. But if I turn and face him and reach for him, his tail goes under and he tries to move away again. But it's like he can't help himself. He's like, you got to have something going on there, lady.
Healer's the dog you couldn't touch.
So this is a strange handler for him. For us, when we have a dog like this, I talk about this a little bit later. I want to move him off of, as soon as he's comfortable with one person, okay, that person's out, you move him on to the next person. So Lisa's a lovely handler. She's very gentle. So this was, again, his second day. So he's already walked with me on a leash like there's no problem. So I want somebody else to leash walk him out now and see how he does with that. But see how there's a regression in his behavior because he's not as familiar with her.
Yeah, go for it. We're right behind you. One little one. There you go.
This is a volunteer. She looks exactly like me. I thought it was me with the feet and the boots, but it's not me. Okay, so he's up front and wagging. I was really excited because I thought he took that treat, which is a huge indicator. I think that you guys could concur. Once the dog is eating food, that tells you that their perception of threat or their anxiety level has come down because they're now willing to accept food. So that tells you their threshold has changed at that point. But he spit it out. But he at least took it, and he was up front, and he's wagging, and he looks much more affiliative. So.
Are the dogs in walking past? Have they been in play groups?
Yes, some of those were in with him. The one that was making the god-awful noise was in with him. Yeah. Okay. Resources maximized. I'm a big resource kind of junkie because it's a reality check for all of us. You know, if there's some things that we're doing but you don't have the staff or the time to do it, you should not be beating yourself up that you can't do it. You have to be realistic about the resources that you have available. And if you know that you want to attain something and you're short of resources, then you have to be creative about how to go get those resources so that you can accomplish it. But don't bother beating yourselves up if there's certain things that you're just not set up to do yet. But think about it. Two people can, that was in the beginning when we showed up at Longmont Humane Society. It was myself and my girlfriend. And we told staff, don't worry, and the volunteers, we'll handle getting all the dogs out in the morning. And it took us, on average, like 2.5 hours every morning to get all the dogs that could be walked, you know, other than the ones that were on stray weight or cord holds. It took us that long to get we would do all the playgroup dogs and then we would walk the rest that couldn't be in playgroup for whatever reason. So it's just maximizing your time resource, right? And then also the proportion of how that feels to the dogs. You know, getting to go play in the playgroup for 30 minutes instead of a quick in and out potty walk. You know, it's proportionally much better for them. Okay, reduction of barrier aggression and on-leash reactivity. Healthy contact between these dogs that are kenneled in this kind of territory together should certainly, you would think, logically, reduce that perception of threat. So now when they're walking down the rows and the dogs are wah, 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 maybe it's kind of like, hey, I'll see you out in the play group instead of I want to kick your butt, you know. It's like it's a different, possibly, I don't know exactly what they're thinking or saying, but, you know, the hope is that we're reducing that perception of threat between the two of them, okay? How many of you do need to euthanize when you see extreme barrier aggression or on-leash reactivity? That's a threshold behavior for you? None of you? Oh, a little bit? Okay. These are two behaviors that I actually have a little bit, not a rant about. If I come to your shelter to work with you, like I'll be at Multnomah and then, is it Willamette or Willamette? Willamette. If they walk me through their kennel and there's a dog going ballistic when a dog goes by and they say, we're going to be euthanizing that dog for dog aggression, I'll say, well, how did it do when it actually got to other dogs? Well, we don't know. Look at the behavior. Obviously, it's dog aggressive, so we would never let that dog access another dog. I'll jump up, down, pitch a fit, scream and yell, and say, you can't euthanize it claiming it's that reason because you don't know yet. If you say to me, this dog has extreme barrier aggression and we don't place that behavior, I'll respect that. But you can't tell me that on-leash reactivity or barrier aggression are your indicators that a dog is dog aggressive. Does that make sense? Okay. Better roommate matches. After time playing together, generally, like if I have to throw them in a tight space together, if they've been able to bounce around outside, they're going to do better. They have some kind of communication and understanding of one another. Okay. The Humane Society, when we got this gig to do it last year, Adam from HSUS called me and said, do you room your dogs together and will you talk about that? And I said, sure. And I ran and I videotaped and we got the presentation. So this is what I put together for him really quickly. So this was just to show our facility and the dogs living together. I obviously love that dog. It's like I go to leave and I come back and film her more. And come back and film her more. You guys also want to notice the state of the dogs in the kennel right now. Now our kennel was designed so that the public is outside of double glass. So the kennel is inside and then there's glass all around them. So our public has access to be viewing the animals at any time, but for some of my dogs, they respond badly because they don't have the olfactory or the audible feedback from people staring at them and it freaks them out. Most of them aren't as stimulated by people coming around because they don't have the olfactory and the audible feedback. Now look at the little girl. She's so excited to give the treat, and our mean staff person feeds the dog herself. We're good to dogs, terrible to children. Of course, you always have to pick tearjerker music to put behind your dogs. If you guys listen to the music, anybody crying yet? But YouTube's a bugger, man. They catch me every time. I put stuff up because it's copyright issues. You know, I put a song on and they take out my audio. I usually get away with it for a little bit, then they yank it. So this is in the afternoon after all the dogs have been through playgroup. And this is a time when there's not bad dogs. I don't know, is that frustration behavior or do you think they're just having fun? I don't know. I think he looks like he was having fun tearing up that bowl. This is also, I happened to be filming at a time of day which was not a ritualized schedule, like when a new shift of volunteers was coming in or we were preparing to feed, because of course there's a different activity level in the kennel when you have, you know, they know they've got a time clock, internal time clock. They know when you're coming. So we have some real life rooms that are individual enclosures where we'll have 1 or 2 dogs, so that's really even more of a kind of capsule with less stimulation. And some of our glass is frosted, some of it's not. That's so that some of the dogs are going to be promoted to jump if they've got the frosted glass, but some of them are going to be more barrier aggressive if they don't have the frosted glass. So we kind of like put together the kennel daily like a puzzle. Where's everybody going to do the best? And then we have a main kennel block of side-by-side kennels that are behind the glass. Okay, you guys get the gist of that. Okay, so better roommate matches, better adoption matches. From all their social experience while sheltered, many of our dog meets go more smoothly, and we have comprehensive information about our shelter dog's interaction with numerous other dogs. Now, what's the component that's missing, though, that we can't tell the person? Even though, yeah, we've seen them play literally with 100 dogs. What piece is missing, do you think? Their dog? Yeah, their individual dog. She said their individual dog, or how their dog is going to do with their dog, and the relationship they're going to develop with this dog. And because they now develop a relationship, will the dog be crankier and resource guard them when they're around other dogs? Because at the shelter, that's one thing that we don't typically trigger, is that whole kind of relational guarding or resource guarding or guarding, either one, the difference between the two. I want to protect my handler or the handler's all mine. We don't tend to trigger that exactly the same. So we have had dogs that we've placed that did beautifully in play groups, and then they take the dog, we place them with another dog, their dog meet went great, and then they went home and they said, wow, the new dog or one or the other won't tolerate sharing the space, really living together. That happens sometimes. So it's not a guarantee. Okay. Is that what I talked about, the pink thing at the bottom? Yes, okay. Will somebody give me like the 10-minute warning for the break? I think that I timed this all out and did my math correctly on my videos, but yeah, right. Okay, so this is, 3LV is our 3rd level volunteer corps. We have now a 4th level volunteer corps, and our 4th level volunteers actually train and handle dogs that staff is not allowed to handle. The reason we do that is it's because they have the time. It's usually for a dog that we anticipate is going to be fearfully, defensively aggressive, and we know that the staff does not have the time to go in and make sure that they squat down sideways, use a slip lead correctly. So we take that burden off of our staff while they're cleaning and feeding, and we let the volunteers go in and handle it. And we've trained them. They have to go through a test. They have to do a field test. They have to test with me with their handling skills. They have a written test all about learning theory, operant conditioning, classical conditioning, and then they have to go through a field test with me and demonstrate working certain dogs with certain behavioral problems to be rated 4LV. We only have 7 of them. But anyway, they're like the cream of the crop volunteers. This is the 3rd level volunteer class, and this is a little bit of false advertising. We're working the dogs through the gauntlet. I put all of my barrier aggressive dogs in this one kennel, and my thinking was they're kind of setting off no matter what. I used to kind of disperse them around the whole kennel, but then I realized that was creating stress for all the rest of the dogs. So instead I figured, well, you're all jerks. Let's just put you all together. At least we're just going to put the stress on each of you because it's part of your own darn fault anyway. So we put them all in one place, and you see we have blankets up, and they're really quiet in this demonstration, which I want to say, see how good we are? It's not really the truth. You'll see it's just a weird fluke that the dogs were so good, but there are dogs in the kennels. And we believe that we get here because of play groups. If these dogs hadn't all had play groups, we don't believe that they'd be this successful in this kind of an exercise. Do you have volume, Elta? Okay. Actually, if we can keep the volume up and just put it down if it sounds painful.
These are the barrier aggressive dogs.
So, anybody know what I'm doing there? Yep, counter conditioning, right. So, that means that it's the dogs in the kennel, their behavior is not relevant. It's just because a dog is passing, food's falling from the sky. That's it. It's not operant. They don't have to be quiet or sit or do anything to get the food. We're just flinging it because a dog's walking by.
Takes away their choices, makes them feel less in control. That's right. You take away their option for flight, so they're left with what? Come around again. We'll finish the conversation when you come around.
Can you guys hear that? Okay.
Kathy, it's like a trick question asking. Brian, if I take away their opportunity for flight, I try to get them a leash, then what are they left to do?
They're left to try to fight.
Fight. You take away their flight, they're left with fight.
Oh, yeah.
So generally speaking, in kennels, when you crank up on the leash, you're setting the dogs up for failure. Okay, that's it.
When I first came to Longmont, the volunteers were taught, and there was some merit to this. When they took the dogs out of the kennel, they were to put the dog on the outside, so it was closest to the wall. So the handler was between the dog and the dogs in the kennel. That was to try to keep the dogs as far away from each other as possible. Okay, that makes sense, but what's the problem with that? Yeah, you're in the middle, right? So your opportunity for a displaced bite or a redirected bite, and there's a difference between the two, I think. Now, you guys, please tell me if I blather something that is really scientifically incorrect, but I think a displaced bite is not, I describe it as not with intent. The dog is just kind of in a defense mode, and they land on something and they bite it, okay? Like whatever their mouth lands on, they're just biting. They're in a reactive state. A redirected bite is out of frustration. I can't bite you, fine, I'll take you. And then it's a kind of a cognizant on you instead. Both of them aren't fun to receive. But one of them, there's a difference behind them. I consider redirected bites more dangerous than displaced bites. because one's kind of accidental in a way, if that makes sense. Neither one of them are fine or okay or acceptable, and we don't like anybody being bitten. So I changed everything when I came, and the handlers were taught to keep the dogs on a tight leash and rush out of the kennel as quickly as possible. So what does that create? Defense, serious defense. The first dog, there was 2 dogs that were the main behavior problems. I said, who's your worst dog? One of them, her name was Katie Did. Katie, I don't know where that came from. And it was because she was wickedly on-leash reactive. And so all I did when she came out is I gave her like 4 feet of length. She pinned herself to the wall, showed total avoidance. She didn't want to go at the dogs in the kennel anymore. She showed total avoidance, and out she went, conflict-free. Because now she was allowed to flee. Whereas before, by keeping her strung up, they had taken away her opportunity for flight, so what was she left with? Fight. And so they kept escalating the behavior. And as they rush her out the door while she's going, what gets reinforced? Acting like that gets me out of here faster, right? So we switched all that around. Okay. All right, candidates for playgroups. For us, it's all ages, breeds, temperaments. It depends on the dog individually, if they're going to enjoy it, if they need it or not, or if they really could care less. But most importantly, the comfort level of the handler. So this is my dog. Where's my Huzmawatsi? All right, well, this is my dog, the pit bull type dog down there, and it doesn't look like he's saying, thanks for the snacks, Mom. All right, anyway, okay, maybe you don't find that funny. I need my Huzmawatsi. You got it? Where? Oh. Where'd it go? That's going to be bad. Okay, I want you to tell me why I don't decide to bring this dog into this playgroup. Tell me what you see. The black and white one that's on the way out, you know, with the handler. I'm looking at him. I end up not letting him in. That happens a lot, okay, when they're in there. Any ideas? What do you think?
The dog is really interested in the other dogs, and he's also showing dominance behavior by urinating on the other dogs.
Okay, that's a good observation. Anybody else?
It looked as if the white and brown kind of husky mix was standing in between you and the black and white dog, and when you moved, it moved with you.
Okay, so you thought maybe I was anticipating an issue between the two of them. Okay, what do you think?
I don't know if this is relevant at all, but the black and white dog tail, instead of being up and wagging, was straight out and stiff.
Stiff, right.
And sort of wagging, but not a happy wag.
Right. Okay, now you guys are going to see a gazillion more examples of dogs kind of at the fence ready to come in. I'm going to tell you the honest truth, and I wasn't setting you up. I have no freaking idea what it was, because when I look back on that video, I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see anything so overtly bad. But for me, all I know is at that moment how I felt when I was there. I'd rather do this more controlled one-on-one, right? That's it. So what I can support and embrace for you, I don't care what anybody tells you. You go with your own feeling and your comfort level and your gut. Okay? It's really important. I'll always support you in that. Okay, did I get this back? Oh, look, it's back. Okay, so all shapes and sizes. So we've got chow-chow type dogs, little dingling dogs, and bully breed type dogs, and cattle dogs, and ponies, and we have a dog with boobs. She comes in, and it's kind of like, you know, she's so cute. It's really, to us, there's no criteria that says because this dog is this, it's not allowed in playgroup. Only the way it behaves is going to get it booted out of playgroup. Okay, we give them all a shot. If they don't like it, if we have a dog that just doesn't want to be there, we don't make them go to playgroup. It's supposed to be a positive resource. Okay, so understanding play styles. Now this is just me in a very unvalidated way, just my own opinion. I hate going up against PhDs. Okay, so anyway, high school dropout. Sometimes I think, how'd I get here? Anyway, so I just came up with cutesy names for play styles for me. I broke it down into 4 groups. So gentle and dainty. They're so easy. These are the dogs that you wish were at the public dog parks at all time. You know, that everybody that had these kinds of dogs, that's where they would go and that's where they were allowed. It's a very mutual play. It's pretty quiet. It frequently starts and stops like, oh, this is too much. Let me gather myself, you know, type thing. And they become pretty nervous with rowdy play, so they'll break out a lot. I really don't, that's boring watching Gentle and Dainty, so I don't have a video of that. So, okay, a Rough and Rowdy is pretty mutual play too. You saw an example of it already in Charlie's first play group where they're just pounding off of each other pretty mutually. It's noisy, a lot of vocalization, very physical. A lot of grabbing and holding and mouthing goes on with it. Chasing, tumbling. It does escalate and de-escalate on its own a lot of times. It can trigger conflict just like kids in a playground. You know, they're playing nicely and then one of them ticks each other off and then they get mad at each other for a minute and then, all right, well, let's play again. What is that? I don't know. Make it stop. There's a hidden video embedded in this, I remember. I forgot, but now I remember. It doesn't really exist there, but somehow it's hidden in the PowerPoint. So I have no idea what it is. So this guy, this is what they should look like after a Rough and Rowdy play style. That's actually, somebody was playing with a tennis racket and a ball in the Sally Port with him, but it's a cute picture. And he was a Rough and Rowdy play style dog, so it's kind of not, it's correct for this slide. Okay, push and pull. That's basically kind of like, it's herding, that herding style of playing. So it's sometimes mutual, but push and pullers don't look for other push and pullers necessarily. They just want to move something around all the time. So it's not necessarily, it's not mutual so much, but it has a lot to do with chasing and driving and heeling. Sometimes it can get noisy, wah, 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 because they're yelling, it's obnoxious. It can escalate at times. It does often trigger a conflict because they tick off the other dogs. It's obnoxious. You know, they're tagging them in the butt. The other two are rough and rowdy playing, having a great time, and hey, what are you doing? Stop. You know, they get mad at each other. And because it can be antagonistic to the others. Okay, these are just cute pictures. This is relatively quick. So this is the dog that's got the push and pull play style. Is there volume? It's important to hear the volume because you can hear barking or chuffing or panting. So the other two are kind of playing and he's just following along constantly trying to move them around or, see what I'm saying? It's not very intense, but that's an example of it. How am I doing on time? I don't wear a watch. That's really stupid. I what? I have 45 left? Oh, okay. How much? Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Okay. So seek and destroy is has to do with kind of prey drive. Experts talked about it earlier, that play is a version of practicing things for real things in life. And it's that posturing between the dogs that tells each other, okay, we're just playing now. I don't really want to kill you, but now I'm going to pretend, right? So seek and destroy is the version of that I'm going to kill you kind of play style. It is rooted in prey drive. It's often not noisy with a lot of growling and then squealing from the one that's getting killed. And then it can escalate for sure. They get a little excited in it. They get like a little too intense. They're not quite as responsive to the other dogs sometimes because it's a really big fun for them. I tend to intervene on this one a lot. And when I intervene, it's about when the dogs are not responding proportionally to one another. It's not because I'm trying to dictate what kind of relationship or play style they have. It's just, this one's trying to tell you it's too much. It's trying to tell you it's too much. You're really not listening, so let me help you listen. If that makes sense. It can be kind of provocative to others. When two dogs are playing like this, all of a sudden that packing up thing, a bunch of dogs noticing that really quick, rapid movement, you could get a bunch of dogs pretty enticed by that. So I want you to remember this dog. His name is Anakin, because you're going to see him again later. This is Daffy here. She's one of my all-time favorite dogs ever. She was a behavioral transfer and wicked unleashed reactive dog. And she's the one doing the push and pull play style with this little puppy. Or seek and destroy. Sorry. Seek and destroy. Now, I want you to watch the puppy, though. The puppy does engage her at certain times, too. See? Okay, so that tells you it's mutual play, even though there's a role going on. Now, this dog is a push and puller.
Okay. Okay.
Well, he got him, they were literally dragged him around by his throat, and then he was taking him in and engaging him. Is that one coming in? Hey, lady. Whoa. And the boy.
So this little puppy, does anybody feel like that puppy feels like prey? Do you think he feels like prey? Yeah, okay. So do you think I guess the better way to say it, does he seem concerned? No? Okay. Sometimes a little bit? Yeah. When is it that you feel like he looks a little concerned? What makes you feel that way? Yeah, he hides. His ears kind of go back a little bit. His tail tucks. He, what's that? He arches at his back a little bit. He humps, right? So he's got all that full picture of posturing. Not just one piece, not just hackles, not just tail. He's got kind of this full picture. But then what we can tell, at least what I see, is that because he comes out and re-engages it, he's not that concerned. And he keeps managing to make himself safe and kind of slow it down when he needs to. So I didn't offer to interfere at all at that time. Okay, I hate the slide, and I forgot that I hate the slide, and I should have changed it because it's kind of annoying. But the bottom line, it could be so much simpler than what I did here. It's color-coded, gentle and dainties are pink. Basically, all of the play styles get along with each other. That's what I've noticed in general. What I've noticed doesn't go so well down here, the not equal, are the push and pulls and the rough and rowdies. I kind of described that before. The rough and rowdies will be playing, the push and pulls will be tagging somebody in the butt, and it annoys them. Okay? Gentle and dainties don't like anybody but themselves, pretty much. So does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that? Way too much going on that slide. Well, and this is my Shiba Inu mix, my son's dog, and our little Malinois puppy that was given to me by a friend of mine, and they love each other. That's actually a fun play thing. This is my dog Cooley again, my main squeeze, and that's Sammy, behavioral foster when I was in Southampton, and that's Marae, who was a stray dog in the Hollywood Hills that a client of mine found, and she lived with us for a long, long time, and I finally let her go with somebody else, and she saved that family from a fire. She was one of those. She got some award because she went out in the middle of the night, and then they couldn't find her. She never ran away. I mean, it was weird. And so they went out with a flashlight for like 45 minutes looking for her and came back to the house burned down. Isn't that weird? Anyways, she's an awesome dog. And they're having full fun there, torturing Cooley. Okay, so creating healthy behavior. Here's my Malinois puppy. She's going to grow up right in front of your eyes. This is Tasha. She was a pretty dominant female, pretty witchy with other dogs in a lot of cases. And I'm going to actually say this now. There's no part of this presentation that's supposed to be about we're successful all the time. I'm going to tell you the truth about some dogs in here that we were not successful with, the dogs that we let go for, and why. Because I don't ever want anybody but feeling badly like I'm up here saying, well, see, I can fix all these dogs, because that's not true. All I can tell you is that we try really hard, and we want to support everybody trying as hard as you can with the resources that you have. I loved this dog, Tasha. She came home with me, but she was unpredictably aggressive with people, and so I let her go. But anyway, that's the truth about Tasha. Puppies, they learn best from appropriate adult dogs about bite inhibition and responsive play behavior. I'm kind of a Dunbar bite inhibition fan. I buy into some of that stuff. I think there's some merit to it and taking it into consideration. And I had a black lab once that was a private board and train, and he was not dog aggressive at all, but he's a little bit of a resource guarder with his toys. And you know, every time a dog would walk by, he'd go, "Arr!" And I swear he'd sink a tooth every time. It wasn't like a big attack, but it drove me crazy because I kept having to doctor puncture wounds in my other clients' dogs because this dog just had no bite inhibition. And so what kind of studies are there to verify or not verify bite inhibition?
As far as I know, there are no formal studies that have actually examined it. I mean, it's reported as something that's seen or not seen. I understand that it's something that's considered to... Actually, there was, is it Wilson? Wilson et al., like 1976 or something. They looked at...
How do you know that stuff? Doesn't, like, your brain explode at some point?
You know what? I've got complete gaga mama brain right now.
Okay.
I've forgotten most of what
That
I've
was an
ever learned.
unfair question then, huh?
Oh yeah,
Loaded question.
especially after that huge lunch.
Right.
Wilson looked at the effect of the mother's behaviour on the development of the puppies.
Okay.
And specifically, he was looking at the role of inhibited biting. So even though there's a genetic component to aggressiveness, and aggressive mothers are more likely to have aggressive puppies, there's also a really interesting teaching role that mothers that do inhibited biting with their puppies, those puppies grow up to actually be less aggressive.
Okay.
So that
feels like it would make sense.
Yeah, because they're learning boundaries
Yes.
from a young age. If you have a mother that's teaching them boundaries and telling them, that's enough, and doing it with inhibited biting,
Right.
these puppies are much better behaved and significantly less aggressive when
Okay.
they're older. Yeah, that's the,
So for
that's
all
the
those
big
reasons,
study.
I think you should do this. No, I think that allowing puppies to play with healthy adults is really important as far as anecdotally helping with bite inhibition, responsive play behavior. I do believe that it's important. You can also ruin a puppy by putting them in with the wrong dog and giving them a bad experience. And again, clinically, I'm sure that you've seen cases like that where you feel that, wow, they had bad dog-to-dog interactions and you kind of had this cemented fear, anxiety, whatever, as a result of it. So they have to be with good dogs, no unsocialized, fearful, defensive, or offensive adults. They can socialize with other puppies. Of course, puppies are good to play, but I get really annoyed when people only let puppies play with puppies because some are bad puppies. And they're mean to the other puppies, And I think that it's like having a bully in the group. And sometimes I think people just make this assumption that puppies are good together because they're all babies and we're all together. So I think you just have to be mindful and watch that puppy behavior and make sure you're developing good play habits. So this is some of that footage, man, that you think, I cannot believe how lucky I was to get this. There's Whuppy. You guys know why I'm sponsored by Animal Farm Foundation? Because I have all the pit bulls teaching everybody how to play well. And I don't do that on purpose, that's just how it comes out. Not always, but this is just classic. Okay, now I have to responsibly say, of course you have to be careful about size. There can be an accidental injury just due to size. But how would you want to deny this exchange either? It's kind of like, yeah, you watch it and you be careful, you be a good babysitter. Is that not just the cutest thing? She says, oh, may I have enough? God, sometimes you get footage like that and you're like, there is a God, man. Okay. So behavior modification. How am I doing? Okie doke. More effective trainers than humans. I'm a big believer in this. I do not believe that they think we are dogs. That's just my own personal opinion. I think that they love us and we're something strange to them, but we're not that. I don't know. That's just my opinion. So I think dog-to-dogs can do much better at fixing problems. If you want to fix dog-to-dog issues, use another dog. So this little dog, I could not wait for this dog to be up on his stray weight period, this little puppy. It's like, oh, it's so cute. It's like my kind of dog. I wish that I had the film that morning from Playgroup. What a little jerk this puppy was. He was like this little Tasmanian devil, wreaking havoc on everybody. And so I pulled him out of group right away and thought, okay, I'm going to socialize him, controlled, and I'm going to use dogs to teach him. And it's interesting, if you watch Honey's body language. You learn a lot about a dog, not by watching that dog, by watching the other dog.
Being so good with him, though?
And Honey is a very, very confident social dog. She looks a little worried about this, doesn't she? Now that's weird. That's a little puppy. There's something up with that puppy. And look at the tail position. She's trying to say, okay, this is what you do. You just play like this.
He's got a hook on him, and he's got a lot of interest, but
And I want you guys to notice, I really don't say much.
kind of a miss not sending him out without
It's like a pet peeve of mine when I start handlers and they can't zip it and they're constantly jabbering at the dogs. It makes me crazy.
Definitely, I'm sure everyone looks at him like the cute little puppy who...
Yeah, but let me tell you something, there's a little edginess.
Something in there.
Gamey, too. See, she's not giving him any...
Whoa.
If you think about it in your careers, the people that you've seen that not talk about dog training but actually do it, that you've had the pleasure of seeing work with dogs, anybody that you've seen, I'll bet, if you think about it, that's really, really good, is dead quiet, if you think about it.
Like, I used to have my kid, I want to play with Jake, but I don't want to do that to Jake.
The way you look at horses, too? Exactly. Yeah. When you have somebody jabbering constantly at a horse, that is driving you crazy? Yeah.
And she will launch herself at my face, so...
Now this is Jade. She's a very soft little dog. And see her demeanor around this puppy, too? And see that puppy's demeanor? Tail's kind of up, straight, kind of rude. It's nothing overt.
Ooh, grabbing her hock.
Yeah, it always does that. Everybody starts going, oh, poor thing. That's not fair. But look what happened. Now, look at the demeanor between these two dogs. Look at her demeanor. It's like I told you. Hold still and be polite so I can say hello to you now. And this puppy, different. A little more respectful. Now, what about posture? The tail is still straight. The hackles are still up. But the whole picture has changed a little bit. Do you think?
Good
Tell me
for
I'm wrong.
her.
Don't tell me, yeah. You guys, I was at one seminar. You know, anybody of you seen Toy Story? All little blue Martians and the claw. Oh, the claw. And I swear, everybody in the audience is like, oh, I see it. And I'm like, I don't see it. The same. So I really want you guys to be able to say that, if that's the case. Okay. Mental and physical outlet, higher receptivity to training. Okay, so if they get this outlet from the playing, what I'm saying is then when you go into the kennel to do a training session with them, you're going to have a totally different dog to start working with out of the chute. Okay, so this is my third level volunteer class.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Did I count you twice?
These are shelter
so
dogs.
now this is beautiful. I want to see everybody just standing quietly without talking to, petting, touching your dog, and with a loose leash. Just try to be still for a second. Good.
Here's Daffy.
Nice.
Some of these dogs
nice.
have some training criteria. Some are
Good.
brand new to
Sarah,
this class. It is
Diamond,
5.
Come on. Okay. Nice. Beautiful.
You
guys
beautiful.
can start clicking and treating, and everybody get your dogs in a down. Class is over when all the dogs are in a down at the same time.
So those are the dogs that already know it down, for example.
It's okay.
I talked to you guys
When
a
your dog
little.
is down, say the word here to me so I can look at you.
I talked to you guys a little bit about training, but this presentation is about dog-to-dog
And
interaction,
again,
so I
I
don't
want
get
the
into it
energy to
much.
stay
If you
low.
want to
So
ask me
calm,
or yell at
steady.
me about my training, you can do it after in between, as much as you'd like.
And they can hold it, get in proper position next to it. That does not count. Okay, you guys, energy is coming up. Slow down the clicking. Let's all be still for a second. A little more pressure on her, Beeb.
Okay, so I want you guys
There you
all
go.
to
So
notice
just
that we
hang
are
out.
doing marking and rewarding.
Just be paid. Now, you guys watch BB's dog right now. Boom, boom, click, BB. Okay.
So we are doing marking and rewarding,
Okay.
but we also have
Good.
different
Now
equipment
stand
on
straight
these
again.
dogs. We're doing pressure and release.
Good,
so
Peter. Does she have pressure on her leash right now? Or is it, she does loosen it. That's the problem. Loosen it.
we're not using
Peter,
correction
Peter.
to teach what we
There you
want,
go.
but we use
Okay,
pressure and
who's
release,
up
which
now?
is,
Okay,
who knows the
BB
4
can't
quadrants?
nose ruining
What is
it.
pressure and
Nike.
release? Thank you, negative reinforcement.
So I want you to know that so far we're at 6 minutes. Okay, there we go. Ready? To a count 3. It took us 6 minutes to get 13 shelter dogs into the
15.
down in a small room with wonderful volunteers. You guys kick butt. See, I can say butt on tape. You guys.
Okay, so how many of you and I would really like to know for your training programs, how many of you feel like that's an easily accomplishable thing? How many of you think, wow, that's impressive, you like to see that? Okay, and I ask you that honestly because I don't know, we do it all the time, so how do we rate? People seem to get excited by that, but the thing is, with the program we talked about, a full toolbox, it's not a positive-only training program. But anyway, there you go. Okay. Higher ups, I can't remember what this is. Oh,
Good boy. Can you
some
sit?
dogs you just need an excuse.
Can you sit?
Put them in video.
Very handsome. Oh,
He was probably a pit bull fruit bat mix.
boy. He is a good man.
How cute is he? Okay, now the reason why Boo Boo is there, Boo Boo was a Katrina dog. We weren't the original receiving shelter. There's another shelter near us, and then we had 5 dogs dispersed to us. He was rated, he was safer tested when he went into the incoming shelter. He was rated as UU for high arousal. Boo Boo loved playgroups, and we had to basically quarantine them. Remember, for any of you the guys that had Katrina dogs, we couldn't do anything with them it was like 5 months before we could ever do anything. Honestly, Boo Boo was a nightmare to go in with originally. In my heart of hearts, anecdotally believe that if we had not had playgroups as an outlet for him, that's not the dog that he would have ended up. We probably would have lost him, it feels like to me, because he was crazy in playgroups. Love that dog. And he was happily placed when we finally could. What may be considered inappropriate play with a person can be natural between dogs. So when you come home, if you're one of those people like me, drives you crazy if your dog is jumping all up and over you, and a lot of our adopters don't care for that, let the dogs jump all over each other. It's perfectly appropriate between them. Let them get it out somewhere. It's natural. Let them get their yayas out where they can. A pack can create the most natural environment for overcoming fear, anxiety, and defensive aggression. Okay, I got to tell you about her. This is Jalopy. There's a mistake in this. She's got a pinch collar on her, which they should always be removed. Other equipment, we're going to talk about it later, but pinch collar, so my mistake. Jalopy was an owner-requested euthanasia when she came in. And when she was counseled by the front desk that we had a training and behavior program, would they prefer to surrender her and maybe we could make progress for her dog aggression. She had extreme on-leash reactivity and was dog aggressive with the other dog in the home. And so the family was like, wow, we had no idea. Yeah, of course. We did not do the unethical thing of take her in as a requested euthanasia and then not euthanize her. You can't do that. But we advised them and they said, sure, of course. They surrendered her instead for dog aggression and extreme on-leash reactivity. And the pinch collar should come off because it's an extremely dangerous tool if dogs do get into it, getting hooked up on it. You as a handler getting your hand hooked up on it. And again, if you want to talk to me about pinch collars as training tools during the breaks, happy to talk to anybody who wants to.
I do.
And Jalopy went to play groups every day. This was pretty early on. Maybe she was with us a couple of weeks. She was with us. It took us a long time to place her. We placed her, and she came back to us for on-leash reactivity. The mom was really teeny tiny. We offered free adoption follow-up training, and she just felt like it was too much. So we supported her, bringing her back in, and then we rehomed her with that woman's UPS driver because he fell in love. He fell in love with the dog.
Can you see him?
No, you're going to see me correct her when I say I'm not a positive-only trainer. She gets corrected there she'd been taught a replacement behavior. The replacement behavior had been reinforced. So correction, I don't use it for what I want, but I can use correction to say that's off the table. Can't do that.
You got a little girl behind you? Okay.
And if the correction is effective, then you give them the opportunity. They took that piece of information. Now what do you want to do with it? And then you go back to rewarding. She gets rewarded.
Good girl. Very nice.
Help lead me, Michelle. I don't run this.
funny, another trainer from another shelter came to visit, knew that I had a reputation as not being a positive only trainer, walked around, saw these good dog collars and hinge collars hanging on some of the kennels and said, well, do you use food? Yes. Yeah, I use food, and I can click, let's go sit in a room and play the clicker game. I can beat your butt at that, Not beat their butt, when I could win a competition trying to shape behaviors, okay? I'm a shaping freak like the rest of you. Okay, playgroups can provide an enhanced quality of life for many shelter dogs. So this is Rusty. He was another Katrina dog. And was there a question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about playgroups and don't know if we're off subject. How do you feel about humping in playgroups? Do you allow it?
We will talk about that. Yes,
Okay.
we do. And
Okay.
there's examples of it. I have Humping Fest footage for you, and we talk about it.
Sweet, I love humping. Great. Okay, thank you.
We will talk about it. So Rusty was another Katrina dog that actually went to another shelter. That shelter ended up in this huge feud over him. Half the staff thought he was a good dog and just misunderstood. Half the staff thought he was a dangerous dog. So he was transferred to us for the behavior program, and we had the same struggle. He was good until he was not. And ultimately, we did put Rusty down. We felt like he was a huge bite risk. He was pretty defensive in his aggression, and he had no bite inhibition. We couldn't get him through a B-val successfully. So in Rusty's situation, I think with all the time that we put into him, I think having the playgroups and the resource at least gave him that quality of life. We weren't successful, but I think he had a better time. I had this feeling that he might have had a better time with us than he'd had in his rest of his life, although we didn't know his history. But so this is an example of just maybe you don't get quantity of life, but maybe you're able to provide a quality of life. You can't win them all, unfortunately. And when my staff saw this presentation when I first put it together, of course, everybody cried. A lot of people had a soft spot for Rusty, but we didn't ultimately feel that we could place him. So he's the big chow chow thing.
Oh my God! Look at that!
This was a very uptight dog in life, as you'll see.
No, Rusty's playing. Stupid thing.
Oh, and my battery is tanked.
You could even hear the talk about it. Oh my God, he's playing! Oh my God!
My toy.
That to me was kind of who Rusty really was. But I mean, look, none of us interrupted that. Nothing came of that. So that was Rusty. Just to tell you the quick story of these dogs, and then we will break. Kind of on time. It's amazing. Okay, so these guys down here, that's me with a dog named, Jackie. I went to another trainer seminar. It was a training seminar about aggression, and Jackie was brought down by another rescue group as a demo dog for aggression. And we were watching her in the audience like, we loved her. She was just like, she's our kind of dog. So we said, we'll take her for you and work with her. So they let her come with us, and so you see her. Remember when Whoopi came out in the session with the big Newfie, and there was a dog kind of grabbing and playing with her, a brindle pit? That was Jackie. So you'll see her in a bunch of playgroup footage. She'd been in another shelter for a year, and how they would get her past the dogs, they would open her kennel and let her rush down the middle aisle, going crazy at the fence because they were too afraid to handle her when she was going in and out. That's how they would get her out every day. So we ended up successfully placing her. This little dog here, this is Bart. This is a canine handler. This is really bizarre. The Boulder Sheriff County Department, you know what I mean? Thank you. Sent a couple of their handlers to us, how weird is this, to learn about some different techniques because they'd seen that we were pretty successful with this on-leash reactivity thing. So Kelly was so blown away by Bart's progress that she went back and said, hey, maybe we should consider using a little bit of gentle leader stuff. Maybe we should use, so you guys all know, dealing with the canine handlers and having them be interactive about training was really cool. But Kelly loved Bart, and you'll see a lot of footage of Bart later on. This is one of my third-level volunteers. She's a teen, 13 years old. All of these dogs are in class for on-leash reactivity. That's why they're all lined up. That's what we were working on this day. So Mindy ended up, it took us a long time, but we rehomed her. She had double bad knees, and then she ended up being aggressive with the other dogs in the home and was ultimately let go. Very badly on-leash reactive, being handled by a 13-year-old here, but we did lose Mindy. Tank we lost for the same reason. Beautiful in playgroup, but so dangerous getting in and out of the kennel, and we could never get through to him like Jalopy. You saw being successful with her on-leash reactivity. We just never could get him to a point where I felt like he was safe to handle when he was in close proximity to dogs. It was heartbreaking, though, because he was beautiful in playgroup. So that on-leash reactivity didn't mean he was dog aggressive. It was something else. It was displaced biting with him that I was really concerned about. He would get so defensive. Honey, here at the end, oh, this is Janine. She's now our volunteer coordinator. She was a third-level volunteer, went up to fourth-level volunteer. This is John Hendershot, professional trainer. I'm huge with networking with trainers in the community because they all have different skills. So John would come and has behaviorally fostered some of our dogs and came and would work dogs for us. And this is Honey. You'll see some footage of her. She's a dog that I had given up on, had deemed her dog aggressive, and then went back to try again. Actually did some e-collar work with her. And anyway, she ended up being successful. You'll see her in playgroups. And then she was rehomed, and her gut twisted within 2 weeks of being home. So all this work into her, and she'd done so well. And then while we were working on the dog aggression, then resource guarding showed up. So then we worked that through, and then she was with us for a long time. But you'll see Honey in playgroups later. Okay, time for a break? Okay, thank you. Any burning questions before we move on to the next piece? Thank you to a couple of people who came and said hi to me and said very nice things. Thanks, appreciate that. All right, onward. Okay, so I'm not going to talk a ton about training, but it's in here because I have the time to incorporate some of it. Here we go. So to me, what's very important, having been a private dog trainer, still now I do private dog training as well to generate income for the Humane Society. There's a really rude thing to say. They bleep me out, basically. You know, they send me out to generate income for them. There's a rude term for that. But at any rate, so I'm still in the private training sector. There's a very different contextual difference between private dog training and training for a shelter dog program. I think it's really important, and I think a lot of people miss the boat. Like I said, I do enjoy networking with professional trainers. I'm very good friends with most of the trainers in the area. I know which ones are really great at which things, so I have a good pool of people to refer to. And I can tell you a couple of them when they first came in. First of all, they would always treat me like, oh, you're a shelter trainer, which means you couldn't make it in the real world. And I would just kind of smile and nod my head, and we'd end up working dogs together, and there would end up being mutual respect for sure. But most of them, especially if they were method-based, and I'm not a method trainer, the ones that were method-based, they would come in pretty cocky that their thing worked, and they would come into the shelter environment, and they'd be humbled really quickly. Because most of those methods in one way, shape, or form rely upon relationship. And if you are truly going to do well by your shelter dogs, you will not rely upon relationship in your training programs. And I have people get really vehemently argumentative with me about it. And my only thing is, unless you're the person that's going to take them home, you really need to be expert clinical trainers so that your training generalizes to other handlers. So for my group of people, the volunteers and the trainers that work with me, I put an e-collar on them if they say, oh, but that dog's good for me. So they know that right away that that's not the right answer. So if that's where you're stuck, that dog's doing really well for me, but not doing well for everybody else, then you're not doing your job as a shelter trainer. So here's a little bit of nitty-gritty about that. This is one of my all-time favorite clients on the planet. He was so nice to work with. He did everything I told him to do. His dog had a little bit of problems, but he was committed and he was dedicated, and he was at every session, and he didn't mess around. Anyway, so that's Wyatt and Rick. Rick Hartman, he's the golf pro at the Atlantic Golf Club in the Hamptons. Just love those guys. I wish all clients were like Rick and Wyatt. And these are two of our shelter dogs that were at a canine. Remember, we had a good rapport with the Boulder County Sheriff's Department, so they invited us to like a canine event that they were having, allowed us to bring shelter dogs. So these are some of our shelter dogs doing downstays we're not holding off-leash downstays while we're taking pictures. So private training encourages clients to develop a good, solid relationship with their dogs. Of course, we want them to do that. But in shelter training, I'm discouraging handlers from relying upon relationship. Maybe you develop a relationship momentarily, but as soon as you have developed it, you want to move it on. You don't want to let the dogs focus on you, unless you want to take them home. In private training, you move towards influencing the behavior immediately after you've done the initial assessment. That's your professional job. You go in there, you say, what's your problem? Bada bing, bada boom, this is what we've got to do. Get on it. You know, they've got to get bang for their buck. So you need to be very performance-oriented, as you should be if you're a good professional. In shelter training, though, we're focusing on assessing behavior as we're progressing through things, trying to decide who is this dog going to be if I'm not here to influence them correctly, right? So we're trying to assess their behavior as much as then decide, okay, now that we kind of have a feel for who you are, now we're going to try to influence you a little bit as well. In private training, time is not necessarily of the essence, right? But in shelter training, time and resources are usually limited. So we have to get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible for the sake of the animals, because a lot of times, if we don't, they will deteriorate faster than we can improve their behavior, right? If somebody at home wants to dork around and hire me like the piano teacher for 18 weeks because they just like having me come around, that's fine with me. I don't mind. It's up to them. Performance does not necessarily need to generalize. You know, if I have a private handler, they've got a problem dog, and they're doing well by their dog, and they're working their dog, training their dog, managing their dog, it doesn't matter to me that that dog, they could hand that dog over to the neighbor and the neighbor can work the dog. It doesn't matter. It's important that they can work their dog. But in training, performance must generalize. So if I've taught Jalopy to do what you saw her do, it would have been more valuable to see her doing that for another handler, not just me, right? So I'll have to get that on tape next time. Somebody working for somebody else. Although you saw the third level volunteers working those dogs, right? Obviously those individual handlers haven't been working with those individual dogs for a couple of weeks, right? So obviously that's an example of generalized training and handling. In private training, verbal and physical cues are okay. You know, if you need to ask your dog to sit and you give them a visual cue, which is like kindergarten cueing for dogs, that's great, there's no problem. I would suggest that in shelter training, you concentrate much more on environmental cues, because not everybody's going to use this sit command. They might use this sit command. Their tone of voice is going to be different. So again, the sake of generalizing, if you can teach a dog, when I show up at a closed door, that's my cue to sit, not because somebody's asked me to, for example. And you'll see some video of that. Oops. Okay, environmental cues are preferred. Oh, there's the video. Okay, so I want you to think about the concept of handling versus training. To me, the best people, I've got like a top 10 list of all the trainers that I've seen over the years with different species that just knock my socks off. And every single one of them is both a master handler and a master trainer. And when I say a master trainer, that means that they understand training at a clinical level. They understand operant conditioning, learning theory, all the jargon, all the junk. They can explain every time they use a tool and a technique why and what quadrant it fits into. Those are true trainers, right? They can train to a high level of performance. They can get animals to do things that you and I can't even imagine. They're master trainers, but they're also master handlers. They're dead quiet. They're finesseful. They use their hands correctly. They use their body language correctly. You know, they can get animals to look really good because their handling is so good. But there's a big difference between somebody getting a dog or an animal through some paces and making them look good. Like when I was working Jalopy, did that look to you like handling or training? Remember Jalopy when she was in the on-leash reactive dog in the kennel? What do you guys think? Which one do you think, handling or training? Both? Okay, both. Probably a little bit of both. I think I'm a pretty good handler, I hope, right? But at that point for her, there were some behaviors that she was independently responsible for. So like I wasn't really doing a lot of things to get her there. She was doing things and then I was giving her reinforcement and feedback. So it was more of a training exchange. When I gave her a correction, when I'm actively influencing her with what I'm doing, when I'm giving her all those little pieces of reinforcement to teach her, at that point, I'm training her, but there's a lot of handling. Somebody could be doing the same thing but like a clod and it won't go so well. You know what I'm saying? So I want you just to be kind of mindful of this concept of handling versus training. And is that dog doing well because it's really learning something independently or because you're getting them through it? Okay? If you're just getting them through it, it's not going to generalize as well. Okay, so is the dog responding favorably to one particular person? Like this dog is loving me, his mom. Oh, damn. Okay. What happened? Oh. Okay, look, can you guys see how cute? She trained her to do that. Crossing her feet, just like her. How cute is that? It's a shelter dog. Can you see it? Little cross legs? You guys had cookies, you're having that sugar drop now, right? Okay. So does the dog respond to hand, verbal, and or environmental cues? These are things all to consider. So here's a little training video. It's so floaty. There we go. Of course, I don't have the really, really ugly footage in the beginning, which I could kick myself half the time, but he knocked me on my butt, seriously, twice. He got past me. This doesn't even look that bad. I promise he was bad. You guys at this point trust me that I'm not like exaggerating. He was really one of those dogs that he was busting out of the kennel and getting past people all the time.
Doing this, but my goal is to be able
Well, whenever I watch, I think it looks so stupid. So notice the leash is loose. I'm not using the leash to keep him there, right? I'm marking and rewarding the pieces of the behavior that I like, the approximations. That's the easy part, though.
Okay, this is coming back in and leaving him in there.
You guys understand the mirror technique? The point is that when you come and you go, you look the same. As opposed to, I'm coming in to get you, I'm turning and I'm leaving you behind. As opposed to, I'm coming in to get you and we're going out together. Right? So you want to think about that sometimes when you have dogs that panic about you leaving.
Oh my God.
Because you only have two of them. You only have two legs too, but they're trying to invade your space here. What they're looking at is what they're thinking about. So if you're, I'll tell you after the video so you can watch it and then we'll talk about it. I turned down the video again because of a bad barking dog. So Sarah, I shouldn't have turned down the video because she's not asking him to sit. She's just rewarding the sit. Like, you see me, you want me to come in, you have to sit. That's an environmental cue again. We always pair food with putting gentle leaders on. That's not operant, that's classical. We always pair food when they get a gentle leader. Because while gentle leaders are seen as humane tools, dogs hate them, typically. So we try to force it as a more positive thing for them than it is. So Sarah hasn't done this part of training with him. She's not done a mirror session before. I just told her, okay, do a mirror session with him. Let's see how he's doing for somebody new.
An open door is not his cue to release. He has to wait for a verbal release from the handler.
Again, watch. So Sarah's not going to cue him at all.
And here we go again. Environmental cues. Door means sit. Open door does not mean exit. Eye contact, turn to release. Very nice.
That time, she had a little leash pressure in there. I don't know why. So is this training or handling? You see what I'm saying? It feels like he understands what's expected of him, and he's supposed to do it because he's at a gate, not necessarily because Sarah is saying something to him. So he was just a high arousal dog, like all over you. He's tall and he was very leggy, so his paws were up. He used to catch my hair in his paws all the time at the beginning and everything. So this is the point. Honestly, he loved playgroups, so the same thing, because he was an out-of-his-mind, highly stimulated dog. Being in the kennel was really hard on him, so of course, all those frustration behaviors from being stressed he was displaying. So, I mean, we feel like that wouldn't have happened for him. And he was at DFL. He was at a resource shelter that had a behavior program, but they sent him up to us because he was no longer an adoption candidate because of his behavior in the kennel. Yep. Not through the end. No, when you're trained, there's no more clicking, right? Once the behavior is trained and established, the behavior itself becomes self-rewarding, right? Because you've given it a reinforcement history at this point. You've created an association at that point. That doesn't mean to say that in training, things don't fall down and you have to go back to some reinforcement at certain points to strengthen it, especially if you've done any kind of advanced training. You know, you've been doing a downstay and it's been reinforced forever. You haven't had to reinforce it a while. All of a sudden, your dog's now you're teaching all this new, incredible stuff, and they're getting sloppy on their downstays. So you go back and reinforce that downstay again. So it's okay to always, you're always okay to reinforce, but you just have to know that I'm reinforcing, and if I don't fade that out at some point, I'm creating reliability in being there to reinforce every step of the way. If you want to progress your training, you have to get off of that. You know, food's got to go away, equipment's got to go away when a behavior is truly trained. And let's say a behavior like sit or down or come, when you feel like, okay, it's trained, you have what are the three components that you've kind of proofed it for? Does anybody know? Distance, duration, distraction. So your dog will sit far away from you, they'll sit no matter what's going on around them, and they'll sit for a long period of time. They'll understand one command might mean for 40 minutes. Without this regurgitation of constant reinforcement, right? That's how you advance your training. Does that make sense? It's not supposed to actually be a training discussion. Yeah, did you have a question?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I was curious, how long had you been working with him before this video was taken?
Maybe 10 days. Something like that. Okay. Oops. I got all that. Okay, so when you're actually doing playgroups, some of your handling techniques, now that we're kind of in the handling and training portion of things, your tone of voice. You've already heard me kind of chastising people about jabbering a lot. You definitely, less is more, and you want to use it when necessary, no jabbering. I'm being redundant now. Okay, low, not loud. You'll have examples of tone of voice through a lot of the playgroup stuff. Use tones that exude confidence and control rather than reactivity. Does that make sense? It's easier, you might think, yeah, and then when you're in there doing it, oh my God! You know, it's not necessarily, it's a skill, you have to practice for it. Really good way to be conscientious about your tone of voice if it's not your natural skill is to have yourself videotaped and listen to yourself. How many of you hate the sound of your voice when you hear it on the message? Believe me, when you hear yourself jabbering at dogs all the time, it'll make you stop, okay? Consistent negative marker. Okay, we've all been talking about marking for positive clicking or yes as a verbal marker, but I have a negative marker when I want the dogs to stop, or enough. That's what I say. So you have to have something in place that when I say bleh, if you don't stop, an aversive is coming to back it up. Just like when I say good dog or click or yes, food is coming. And by that repetition over and over again, you create an association. So if you want verbal control of your dogs in playgroup and you want to be able to say, enough, and then they'll stop, somehow you have to create meaning with that. Does that make sense? Okay. It's amazing how it just goes away. Okay, body blocking, legs, not hands. Ooh, I was supposed to answer that before. If I'm here and I don't want you scooting past me, and your eyes are this tall, and your eyes are burned down here, and you're looking at that open space with your eyes, and I grab you from here, but your eyes are down here looking, what do you see? You see like that open space, and I can be pulling on you all day long. You're like, but I want to go. So if I'm doing this, I'm constantly giving you like a visual interrupter. It's like a version of body blocking. Hey, no, you can't go through there. No, you can't go through there. No, you can't go through there. Oh, okay, what do you want me to do? And then your eyes are going to come up like you saw Jonah do. If you tend to do this all the time, think about it at home when you're at home with your dogs and people come over, and you open your door and you're holding your dog like this. They're not thinking about you at all. They're looking at that person. They're not thinking about you holding them back with a collar either. They are thinking about what they're looking at. So if you want them to think about that picture differently, you need to influence them visually down here. Does that make sense? Okay. Body blocking, legs, not hands. Oh, what did I forget? Voice. Okay, so consistent negative marker and tone of voice. I think this is a friend of mine, a search and rescue trainer, is in the playgroup with me with her dog because she can't certify him because of his behavior around other dogs, driving her crazy. Because he's got all this training on him for search and rescue work. So she and I are talking about that. I think that's what this is. And some guy, for some reason, walks up to the fence while I'm doing playgroups. I think that's what this is. And just listen to my tone of voice while I'm trying to verbally manage the dogs through this. Yeah, that's what it is. Volume? It's low. I'm not loud. Quiet. Quiet. And now I want them to move to kind of up here because I want to excite them and get them moving. But when I want them to settle, it's enough, quiet, and I'm not shouting at them, right? Because they're barking. I don't want to just bark along with them. And then I say to that guy, "Can you please leave?" No. Actually, I don't ever say anything to him. He just actually decided, didn't he walk away? He decides on his own, like, ooh, like, good, wow, you're perceptive. Okay. All right, body blind. This is really quick. You'll see a little bit more of this later on. So this is legs, not hands. Also, we didn't have catch pens at this time. This is at the old dome. So we had this one, like, major play yard, and if I opened a door to let a dog in, they could escape and be loose, and the street was over there. Not safe. I mean, if you're going to do playgroups, you should set yourself up with a catch pen area for sure. This is before I had that. So if I'm trying to get dogs in and I have to manage the gate and I have 10 in already, and I am dependent upon grabbing with my hands, there comes a point where my hands are going to be full with something. So I better get good at using other parts of my body to take control of that space. Does that make sense? Okay. Can you imagine if I was just standing there and I was trying to step out of the way and trying to hold the gate open and hold the other dogs back? That wouldn't work. Okay, so collar leads. I've got some video in here of me guiding dogs, and my hand is on them, and I'm wanting them to go someplace, but the key is to be guiding them, not walking, picking them up, and dragging them. You can definitely incite a fight that way. One of the biggest bite setups on the planet. I mean, we should help them desensitize to being moved by their collars because that's what people need to do at certain times. But especially in a pack situation, if things get tense and you're not meaning for it to be tense, like if you're not picking them up to make them stop and you're just trying to get them from point A to point B, I've seen many people clip on a leash or grab a collar and totally spark something because they have no finesse in their handling. Okay? So you have to kind of walk bent over. So my hand is there and I'm guiding him. I want him to go with me, but when he's with me, I'm not dragging him. And in this one, she ends up not wanting to, she's a privately owned dog, she ends up not wanting to go with me, and I'm realizing if I just sit here and drag her in, I'm probably going to, it'll make it really negative for her, and I'm like, forget it. See how she starts to set back? So I'm like, it's all right, never mind. We'll do it another way. I think her dad takes her out at that point. So if they're going with you, you want to make sure that you don't continue to drag them, put pressure on them. Remain calm when you're out in play groups, even when there's camper chaos. Makes absolutely no sense until you see the video. This was actually another one of those you've got to be kidding me moments. I think I even go, ay, ay, ay.
But I said I've thrown our resources at Malibu, and she's not, the only thing Malibu has not gotten
Yeah, I'm like, really? Okay. But like, that wasn't so bad, right? That was feels like that could have been a lot worse. I think didn't I even go, ay, ay, ay. Right. That's a big play group too. So the bottom line is at that point, if I'm like, oh my God, don't bring the kids over here right now, the dogs are probably going to go, oh my God. It's going to be if your energy comes up, they're going to go with you. Okay? Let's see if this will work again. Okay, so tools and applications table. On the left, I have spray bottle, a shake can, that's a soda can with pennies, direct stop, that's that handheld citronella spray. They make, I don't want to say what big chain it is because I'm not even sure, and they make these little mini air cans that just blast like a puff of air. I found them in Southampton. Those things are awesome. Expensive though. It's like $12. I think you maybe get like 20 puffs out of it. An air horn is very important. That's the big, you'll see uses of it here. You're going to see it in the hands-on tomorrow. Generally speaking, you want to understand that anything that's audibly correcting is not only correcting to the one dog, it's going to be correcting to multiple dogs. So that's where this chart kind of comes into play. So the spray bottle and the direct stop are really good for individual kind of dogs, the single dog corrections, whereas the audible ones over here for multiple dog, right? Does that make sense? And then interruption versus correction. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Interruption is, does this make sense to everybody? Okay, move on to the next one. So interruption, the goal of interruption is to momentarily influence an interaction, momentarily. You don't want them to stop playing, there's nothing drastically wrong. Behavior is inappropriate rather than concerning. The dogs need to develop different play habits, like just they're getting themselves too wound up. And it's only necessary if the dogs are not responding to one another. If the dogs can interrupt each other, let it be. You don't have to be involved. And remember, the goal is for them to learn how to communicate with each other. So you don't want to be quick to the draw, necessarily. So here's like I think it's the batteries, okay. So here's this little dog, Bart, wanting to play with my Malinois. And you can see she doesn't look quite so happy in that picture. He's bouncing around being a little bit obnoxious. She ends up correcting him a little bit. Here comes that beautiful play bow. And then we have, okay, I'll play with you. And then he jumps up, they end up playing together. And here is an example of dogs interrupting each other. Like, I don't have to get involved. Wow. Ooh, okay. Oh no, sorry, this is a handler interruption. This tan pit right here was playing pretty nicely, and all of a sudden he gets pretty obnoxious with this shepherd. This is the one that was the push and pull player before. He gets himself pretty intense. We have a bunch of DFL people here watching, learning how to do play groups. And he's just kind of like, all of a sudden his energy feels like he's trying to start something. So Sarah, we use the shake can to correct him kind of gently, or to interrupt him kind of gently. And he's still he's just on everybody now. There's just like a little shake, and then I actually bonk him with it. Okay, so having contact with that noise makes it a little bit more impacting. So I don't want him to stop playing. He's not in trouble. I don't want to take him out. I'm just like, hey, chill out. Okay, so that's some handler. He's going to start things between the other dogs, it feels like, at that time. It might have also been because I had people watching, so I was being more cautious. Correction, on the other hand, the goal is to extinguish the behavior. Whatever they're doing has got to stop. It was like Jalopy when she was on-leash reactive at that dog. She'd been showing me that she could do the other behavior, and she understood it. But then she decided to erupt again. I'm trying to tell her that is off the table. So correction is for when that is off the table. Okay? Behavior is concerning and it must not escalate. Dog needs to show increased responsiveness to the handler. Corrections should be something that the dog, not necessarily. If you're trying to make a dog not jump on the counters, you want something to, fall out of the sky and get them, so that it doesn't have anything to do with you. But when you're handling a dog on leash and there's bad behavior, or you're in here managing play groups, you want them to be, forget trying to eat Fido. You better be more concerned about me at this moment, because that's the space that they've put themselves in. So for me, correction is a little bit more relationship-based than interruption. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just for me. Doesn't she look like she's in trouble, my puppy there? That's why she's... Oh, God. Okay, so these guys kind of handle it themselves. That's Miss Bonnie Butt. She was a behavioral transfer. Remember that black and white dog? That's Anakin. Finally, like, now boys. This is kind of a self-correcting slide. I didn't have to do it for them. There's Jalape's tail. There's Jalape. We switched her from a pinch collar to a gentle leader. You like that better for her.
I'm a bad. Don't use your ovaries for starter. Enough. She's a professional bad dog.
Hey, what was that? Did you see that? I don't know. All right, so maybe that was the horn correcting them. But anyway, so that just distracted them. But how many of you guys thought that was going to turn into something? See, it really, a lot of times, it's just not as bad as you think. But I'll have plenty of footage of it getting bad for you, so don't worry. But it's good for you to see for all the times that you go, and nothing happens, right? And that the handler doesn't even have to do anything. Okay, so there is a potential side effect to aversives and tools. You all know that, especially if you're particularly sensitive and working towards positive-only stuff. You're very sensitive to the side effects of is it adversives or aversives? Aversive is a verb, right? Adversives. You get the point. Okay, so these are all adversives. The shake hand, the direct stop, the air horn. Anything audible, the innocent dog, like if one's getting attacked and you have to go in and correct and you use an audible correction, the one being attacked is being corrected at that time too. Okay, so that's one thing that you have to consider. And them being afraid of you, even though you're actually trying to correct the other dog, you're coming in with this big audible correction. They could end up being afraid of you. The direct stop, the physical reaction to the citronella. One of my very dear friends, it's a trainer. She works with dogs in packs a lot. She used the citronella once, and her client's dog had a reaction to it. You know, it's citronella spray. It's not supposed to happen. That wasn't the goal, but her dog had a reaction to it. Fear of the handler when you're going in to correct the other dog, same thing. And the air horn basically affects everybody in the group. So there's a couple of times where we've used the air horn in these tapes where I tell you, God, I wish we hadn't used the air horn. We probably didn't need to go that big at that time. The physical reaction to extreme volume, you'll see at one point, like I'm even trying to direct it at a dog, so it's near their ears and it's really loud, you know. So, I mean, maybe I could bust an eardrum doing that. So you have to be conscientious of that. And then the generalized fear from the air horn. And I'll show you this example. I didn't even know that this is what had happened to this dog, but this was like one of the, it's amazing that I had it on tape, one of the most extreme reactions to the air horn. That's rough and rowdy play style. Now, yeah, see the white dog at the gate? Now, I have no idea, I'm not looking at her yet, so I don't realize that. Now that dog, I had done a bunch of progressions to the point where I got to the air horn. So I don't have all the rest of his session. It was really about him, but I saw this as a side effect. I'm like, hi, Mayday, what are you doing? I had no idea yet that she'd been affected like that. But watch her. Yeah. Then I realized, like, wow, she's freaked. It took 2 weeks for her to want to go near the playgroup again after that. And she had loved the playgroup. So yeah, that was not the intended consequence for her to get that scared at all. And you kind of like noise. Dogs that are sensitive to noises, you don't know if it's going to happen. So yeah, that's the downside, but never, of course, the goal. And then this is so. I thought that I was filming earlier, and it was just so cute. So we only have like 3 seconds of this, but you'll love this. And now, if something is an aversive or reward, is that your opinion or the dog's opinion? Always the dog's opinion. I don't care how you emotionally feel about something. The dog will tell you if it's rewarding or if it's an aversive. And if you get stuck and are not willing to see that, then you're in the wrong line of work, probably. You need to recognize that it's the dog's opinion what's aversive and what's rewarding. Oh, I wasn't recording. They're playing with the aversive, which means it's not. It was so cute. They were bouncing around. They were tossing it, and I thought I was filming the whole time. But they were playing with a shake hand and nudging it around and tossing it and playing tug of war with it. So for those 2 dogs, obviously the shake hand wasn't an aversive. Now, if I had it in my hand and I went doink like I did on that other dog, maybe at that moment, in conjunction with my handling, in conjunction with me being assertive at that time, in conjunction with me giving them a verbal marker, maybe it would have still interrupted them and slowed them down. But by themselves, that rattly shake can was not an adversive to those dogs. Okay. Okay, so when we have dogs come into playgroup, we kind of categorize them this way, like if we're identifying kind of what they are and what kind of work we want to do with them at this point. So unsocialized dogs are overly aroused and or reactive despite appropriate social gestures from other ones. Okay? Maybe that would be a version of anxiety, too, what we learned earlier. So this is the one that you're looking at. This is Damon. Damon would come into playgroups every day and do his business and then head out because he could be around the other dogs. But he didn't enjoy it. He would like tolerate them, so he came in and did his business and we let him out. He didn't have to hang out and play. But he just was pretty unsocialized with other dogs. He just was.
Callie is so mellow, man. She's like a perfect dog.
And if they weren't like in his face, he would pretty much ignore them. Okay, a fearful dog, they're just generally overwhelmed by the environment. It's not specific to playgroup. They're just kind of fearful dogs in general, with handlers, with the environment, and they may or may not be defensive. Like, in other words, defensively aggressive, okay? This is little Abby, the little Wheaton back here. And this was like literally her first day out, and within 3 days she looked like a normal dog. Now remember Honey, the one that I told you that was dog aggressive, and I went back and I did some e-collar work with her, the big kind of Malamute-ish mix, Shepherdy mix, that passed away after we placed her. She, as you know, she wasn't a dominant female, she was a bully. And it's bizarre to me see how the little fearful Abby in the back, she's looking over her shoulder at everything, right? She's like the beaker dog. And of all the dogs that she decides that she just has to go ahead and greet, it ends up being Honey, which I scratch my head thinking, wow, why? But see how she's just kind of looking around at everything? It's not even specific to the dogs. Uh-huh. Yeah, she's just a generally nervous dog. It just was so weird to me that of all the dogs, she picked Honey. What a good girl. She ended up being fine. She played in groups just fine. So the question about that, especially from what we've learned this weekend, is she stressed? Yeah, she looks like she's stressed in that case. Is she stressed in the kennel? Yeah, she's stressed in the kennel. When we go in and enter for the first time, is she stressed? Yeah, they're stressed at that point. So our job is to try to do something about that for them. So the point is, what can we provide for them that's going to be less stressful for them as quickly as possible? Yes?